as a teacher, there's a lot of things that you might try that do not work. Been there, done that. And so I'm always looking for those things that are working and really helping. And when I find something, I always like to share it here on YouTube with you so that you can incorporate it as well. So today we're gonna talk about something that has like completely revolutionized the entire way that I teach, especially with the older kids, especially this year. It's not super magical, but it's been like really a game changer. And that is using group work or centers. I know, not super crazy, but let me give you some backstory. So I was student taught actually at the school where I am teaching currently, and my mentor teacher did pretty much all whole group activities, as I think most of us do. I think typically music teachers kind of fall on that, partially because we're used to, you know, band and choir and that kind of stuff, and so that's all, you know, whole group, as well as it just seems a lot easier, especially if you're at a school like mine where, although I love my children, they're not like the best behaved kids in the world, and so it can feel kind of terrifying to have them like working together and doing things like that. And so I really avoided that for a long time. But in my, I think it was either second year, I started doing centers and really started liking it. And so my third year, I really worked on that, and then COVID hit. So there we are. And now that we're kind of on the other side of COVID, we are just getting back into group work and centers. And this year I went like full ham, like we are doing this, and it has changed everything, especially with the older kids, especially with 5th graders. It has been so helpful, and so that's why I wanted to talk about it today. Even though it can seem terrifying to, you know, have that much stuff going on, it's been really helpful. There's so many benefits of doing more small group and group work and stuff like that. And so things that we're gonna talk about today include things like the kids have better engagement, there's more student choice, there's more differentiation, I actually know what the kids know and get to like work with them one-on-one, and all of these things have helped me be a better teacher and help the kids learn more. So we're gonna talk about why it's amazing, and then we'll talk about some ideas of how you can incorporate some group work / centers into your elementary music classroom. So first of all, engagement. The kids are so much more engaged because they are more actively doing something. Although I do always have them like moving and doing stuff like that, having them in groups means that they're doing different types of activities than we do whole group. So they're doing a lot more like working with rhythms, and they're playing instruments still, and like things like that that maybe we wouldn't be doing as much whole group. And it just has been so much more engaging for them, and also like they just are more excited if they get to work with their friends. Let's be real. Number 2, if you have more heads in one group, that means you have more help. And if you're strategic, you can line it up so that you have students who are like really understanding the concepts and students who need a little more help together. That way they can help each other. This has been like a game changer for me, is having kids like purposefully mixing them so that they can help each other. It doesn't work with every class, but most classes do pretty well with this, and it can be really helpful because kids can explain things to kids in ways that you cannot. And it is so good to have a kid explain something to another kid so that they will understand it. It also gives a nice change of pace. I still do lots of whole group activities, but having, you know, some whole group and some small group and some centers makes it mix it up, and so every day doesn't feel like the same, and you get to change things up and, you know, work to everybody's strengths. It also incorporates more student choice because sometimes I let them pick their groups, not always, but sometimes. And then a lot of times their activities in their group work will require a lot more student choice as well. And there's just a lot more opportunities for student choice in this small group arena versus in the whole group arena, where typically everyone's doing pretty much the same thing. When you do centers, you get to do lots of activities, and some of my kids have said like they love doing centers because they get to do 3 different things. I always do 3 for centers, and so they like having like different things to do and different activities, and they know that they're limited. So if they don't really like one of them, then they know that they only have to stay there, you know, until the timer hits 0, and it's only like 6 minutes, and then they get to go to something else. And so they've really liked having different activities that all usually are on the same concept, but still are just different ways to approach the same thing. They love having just different things to do. And lastly, we have had so much more differentiation opportunities with small group work and centers work and just all of those things. And one of my favorite things is to have like a teacher group, or for me to walk around and help them. And when I do this, I actually get to like see better firsthand what each of the kids know and doesn't know, and how I can help them. And I've been able to help them and really learn more about them than I have in the past doing whole group work. So for all of those reasons, small group or centers or both, is wonderful. Now I mentioned I had already started doing centers, and then I started doing more group work this year. So this year I really approached it as like, what are things the kids can do without my help? And specifically, what are things they can do in groups without my help? So we, you know, at the beginning of the year, we were playing the xylophone, and I was, you know, we were all doing it together and trying to do these things. And then I was like, what if I make them figure it out? And so I started giving them just like a paper with like rhythms and letters, and they just had to figure out the songs. And it was so much more effective and so much more fun, and frankly, so much easier on me. Just being honest. And so it was really effective and really fun. It was great for the kids and also great for Miss Davis, which we also like. And it just was such a better way to approach it. And so I've been really trying to approach it that way since then. We do some things whole group, but I try to work on either doing like partially whole group, partially small group, or, you know, maybe a centers day, or just like mixing it up so that there's different things going on. Now, I know that you're probably thinking like, what do you do in small groups? So let's talk about some different group work activities. These will all work in centers, but some of them are better for centers and some are better for just like group work. I kind of approach them as centers are very structured. Again, they're 6 minutes. There's a timer on the board. Like you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. It's very structured. It's very, you know, like it's, yeah, it just is. You're rotating at certain times and all of these things happen. Group work, on the other hand, typically everyone's doing that at the same time. So even though it's not a whole group activity, it's, you know, different groups working at the same time on usually the same thing or something similar. And there's usually more time in the way I do group work, at least, than in centers and things like that. So they can kind of accomplish different things. So a couple of things that work really well in centers. You can have kids notate songs. This works in centers or in group work. So you can give them like little rhythm manipulatives. I'll link some down below, and have them write out the rhythm of the song. You can do rhythm and solfege or just solfege and have them notate the songs that you've been working on. You can then have them play them on the instruments and do things like that. Number 2, composition has been one of the most successful things. Sometimes we do little composition where it's just, you know, you have rhythm cards, you clap the rhythm and then you move on. Sometimes we do rhythm composition where it's like a serious composition that you then play in front of the class, which is also a great thing to do in group work, because if someone feels more shy, then they're less worried about, you know, performing in front of the class because they have that group with them. It also gives them a little more courage because they didn't have to come up with the whole thing on their own. You can also compose, you know, again, you can compose on instruments. You can have them just do, at the beginning of the year with my 4th and 5th graders, we did a chant composition. So we learned a 16-beat chant, and then you had to write a 16-beat chant. And so it was just words. We didn't even talk about the rhythms yet. And so that was like a really good, easy way to kind of ease into this, and where I found that they like love stuff like this. And so it was a really engaging way to start off the year. Another thing that works really well is partner dictation. So having a group and having one of the kids come up with a rhythm or a melody that all of the kids have to make, whether that's on whiteboards, whether that's rhythm manipulatives, like whatever it is. But it's a great way to have them writing rhythms without, you know, being bored. I'm always looking for fun ways to like write music, writing rhythms and melodies that are more fun. And so they love being able to like try to stump their friends and come up with something really hard that the other kids then have to write. And so those have all been fun. We also do the opposite, where you make a rhythm and then you kind of like try to make a really hard one. So you stump all of your friends who have to try to read it, and someone has to try to read it. Matching games are a really simple one that the kids have been really loving, that I like with the younger kids. I don't do as much group work with the younger kids, I will say. I do some, but not as much. And so matching games is a great way to do that. I just have a couple sets of matching games, whether that's solfege matching games, so it's like the letters to the notes on the staff, or rhythm matching games, or whatever it is. Matching games are always a hit, and they're so easy to implement, which makes them excellent centers activities because they don't take a lot of explanation. And then my last little category, I'm considering centers games. And so centers games are a couple of my favorite things that we do in centers, but we can also do during group work, which I've been incorporating more this year. So number 1, of course, is Kaboom. In Kaboom, you sit in a circle and everyone pulls, and you take turns pulling out a card. You read the rhythm or the melody or the vocabulary or whatever. You can literally do it with anything. Read it. If you get it right, you keep it. If you get it wrong, you put it back in the cup, and then it's the next person's turn. If you get one that says Kaboom, then you put all your cards back work. And this is a magical, wonderful thing because it never ends, and they will read rhythms, and you can walk around and write down who is reading them correctly and write it as an assessment. And it's a really good, easy way to see who is reading quickly and by themselves and like understands, and you can just really get a good handle on that. Go Fish is also one that we've been loving recently. So Go Fish, you get 7 cards. You say like, do you have ta, ti, ti, ta, ta? And if they do, then they give you the card and you put it down as a match. If they don't, then you go fish and you get a new card. I have a couple of sets of these available in my TBT shop that are ready to go, and I'm adding more soon. So if you are interested in that, you can check that out down below. Lucky Lemons is a really fun solfege game that we play. So it's a board game situation where the kids have to move around the board. They roll the dice, they move that many pieces, and then they get a challenge card, and if they get their challenge right, they either get 1 or 2 lemons depending on what the challenge is. Another great way to get kids working together, so they have to learn, so they help each other a lot with this one, which is great. Like they'll, you know, if someone doesn't read something right, they'll help them. And then also just really great for walking around seeing where everyone is, because you can hear them, you know, figuring things out and seeing if they get them or not. I'll link that down below as well. And then one for the littles, since most of this is for the older kids, one for the littles that we love is Feed the Monster. This is a freebie in my TBT shop. I'll link down below, and it is a little like monster cutout, and you put it on a box or on a bag, cut out the mouth, and they read a rhythm or a melody, and then they stick it. If they get it right, they get to feed the monster and put it in the monster's mouth, which they just think is so funny. It's great with 1st and 2nd grade and kindergarten, not so much with like 3rd and up, because they're like, you know, not so much with 3rd and up, but with the younger kids, they really like Feed the Monster, and it is a lot of fun. All right, so the purpose of this video was really to see if I could kind of convince you to try a little bit more group work and a little bit more centers, and I hope that I have accomplished that. If you are more interested in that, I have a freebie that is like a huge long list of centers ideas that also work for group work, you know, if you don't want to do straight up centers. So I will link that down below. It has not just ideas, but also they're like categorized by concepts. There's like rhythm ideas, solfege ideas, treble clef ideas, instruments, orchestra, like all the things. And then there's also links to like videos and pictures and stuff like that, so that you can see and learn a little bit more about that. I hope it was helpful. I know that wasn't like, you know, magical, but really I want to try to convince you that this has been the best thing. It even, I swear, has gotten classroom management better, because 1, they're allowed to talk, so you don't have to fuss about them for talking the whole time. And 2, they're, again, more engaged, because you're usually doing different types of things, and so that keeps them more engaged, and then that means that they're less likely to act up. So try it out if you haven't done it, especially with those older kids. It will get them engaged, it will get them entertained, and they, you know, if nothing else, if you let them work with their friends, then they will be happy. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions about centers and group work, leave them down below, or send me a message over on Instagram. It's @Becca's Music Room. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.